The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Hi folks, welcome to Aging Horizons. On today's show, we'll be talking about the SMP program, the Senior Medicare Patrol program. Their focus is preventing Medicare fraud, and that's happening all the time. If you're on Medicare, you've probably gotten a number of calls saying, I'm your Medicare provider, but I don't know your Medicare number. Now, could you give it to us, basically? We'll talk about what that fraud is, how you can prevent it, and why it's so important to stop it. So stay tuned.
You've probably seen some big-name celebrities on your TV lately talking about all the Medicare benefits you're missing out on. But the insurance companies who are paying for these ads may be pushing benefits not available in Montana. Fortunately, help is available from a friendly state health insurance assistance program counselor who can help you sort it all out. It's free, and we screen everyone for eligibility regardless of your zip code. It's Montanans helping Montanans. Call today.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare Summary Notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
This October, author, scientist, and autism advocate Temple Grandin and Grammy Award-winning musician and anti-bullying activist Daryl J. Williams are coming to Butte for the Putting It All Together conference. 3 days of up-to-the-minute information for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families, plus an inspiring evening talk by Temple Grandin. Registration for the conference and admission to Temple Grandin's talk is free, but register early to ensure accommodations. Go to puttingitalltogetherconference.org for more information.
Providing long-term care for someone in need is a labor of love, but it is a labor. Time apart is healthy and necessary both for the caregiver and the person receiving care. It allows each a respite, time to relax and recharge. If you're a long-term caregiver, visit the new Lifespan Respite website. Financial assistance may be available. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
Hi folks, and welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services Senior and Long-Term Care Division. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and I mentioned we're talking about the SMP program, the State Medicare Patrol. Fraud is a big issue, well, in about any topic you talk about, but particularly in our healthcare system. And we're focusing on Medicare today. Rejoining us again from prior shows, you all know Renee Libri Shanks. You're the SMP statewide director. Welcome back to the show. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
And we'll start at the top here. It's like we call it the SMP program just because it's shorter to say, but it came about because there's a need, Renee. And can you tell us how the SMP program started and what's the need and how do you address it?
Glad to, because I think the background actually today is still so important. The program started in 1997 as a demonstration grant, and then in 1999 it went nationwide. It's in every state in U.S. Protectorate, and it's all about empowering people on Medicare to prevent, detect, and report Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse. And they identified that when we're in the local communities talking to people, that's the best way to reach people. So we are a local, community-driven, volunteer-based organization in everybody's county across Montana and across the United States, trying to help stop Medicare fraud.
Mm-hmm. And I know we'll have a number and a website up that people can contact you during the show. But I remember in the past they were talking about, like in Florida, a Russian group stole millions upon millions upon millions of dollars by accessing people's Medicare number. How important is that number, and how do we keep it protected?
That number is a credit card to Medicare. And several years ago, everybody should be aware, of course, that it's no longer tied to our Social Security number. So the nice thing is that it can no longer steal our identities. However, it can still steal from Medicare if that number gets out. So it's critical that people still protect it just like they used to protect it when it was their Social Security number. And I think you know how easy it is for people to access that number because people get calls all the time. And whether or not they give out the number, they might give out enough information that the scammer, the person committing fraud, has enough information to contact the doctor's office. Like I can go into some of these examples of how they do it and what they do with it. And that results in those $1 million, $1 billion cases that we hear about in the news.
Yeah. Well, Renee, you know, if you're on Medicare right now, you're getting phone calls from, looks like a local area code, Montana, 406, and they say they're from your Medicare provider, which they don't say what the provider is, and they want your Medicare number, but first they want your Medicare date that you applied for Medicare. And I'm wondering why is the date that you applied for important? I guess that's to establish the correct age.
No, the information on your card, it includes the effective dates, which is when it began. So sometimes they need that piece of information. It's kind of an extra layer of protection to have that. Okay. They mainly need that Medicare number. And you're right, they're calling locally, they're spoofing numbers to make it look like they're calling from Montana, which makes you more apt to pick up the phone because you think it must be something I need to know about. Well, you can no longer trust that caller ID for area code. And I just caution people to not pick up the phone unless they know who it is, because even if they say, well, I'm not going to fall for anything, they're still marking themselves as a live line, which means they're going to stay on rotation and get those annoying calls and get more of them. So it's best you don't pick up, you block them, you delete them, and over time you should drop off from those roles.
You know, that's interesting because my cell phone says possible scam call. And, you know, they've been right 100% of the time so far. And, you know, you don't need to even answer it. I'm surprised. I like what you said is that means you're a live person if you actually answer the phone number. And they probably sell those numbers so you get more scam calls. But, you know, I imagine your provider won't call you and say, what's your Medicare number? You're already working with them. They already know your number. So if you're going to answer any of those questions, call your provider. Don't let them call you and you answer out of the blue, right?
Right. The durable medical equipment, you can order your supplies from anywhere. So if a doctor gets an order for a back brace, he doesn't know that you didn't want it if you have talked about your back. If you haven't, he'll probably ask questions before he signs off on an order like that. But if you've actually talked about it, because I always say, who amongst us hasn't had a bad back at some point in our life? So if that's something you've talked about with your doctor and they get an order in from somebody from Florida or New Jersey or wherever, they're more apt to sign off on it because you can, like I said, shop anywhere you want for a back brace. So that's how sometimes they get the information, is they get enough on you to know that that's your doctor. They're going to fax an order and it's something that you've had in your record. The doctor would probably sign off on it because anything that is ordered through Medicare needs to be ordered by a provider and a provider that you've seen, or there's some telehealth incidences. But they get around that by ordering something that you've probably had in your record, or they've got practitioners on their payroll that just sit around and sign orders all day. So it happens because we're not paying attention. And I think I'm a broken record, but I can't stress enough that people need to read their Medicare summary notices. And they need to just look at the providers, the dates of service, and the services, and just make sure it all makes sense to them, because that is how you stop the fraud. So it doesn't get to $2.75 billion or $39 million. You stop it when it's $100 or $500. You stop it when it first happens, and it never gets to that point. So Just read those statements.
Okay. Well, thank you, Renee. We've quickly drawn to a close on our first segment. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I was outside working on some equipment, nothing too strenuous. I started sweating and feeling out of breath.
When he felt pressure in his chest and aching in his arms, I knew we had to call 911.
First responders were there before we knew it. 38 minutes later, the doctors had restored the blood flow to my heart.
Now we know dialing 911 saved his life.
Your life is on the line.
This message sponsored by Mission Lifeline Montana.
I take care of my wife at home. When I found out training was available, I said, sign me up. It's made a huge difference.
When my husband was injured at work, it was life-altering. The classes taught me that it's okay to grieve, to ask for help, and to better cope as a caregiver.
My dad lives 4 hours away, and the Powerful Tools classes taught me that it's okay to ask for help. I highly recommend them.
To find out about this course for caregivers, go to powerfultoolsforcaregivers.org.
It's amazing the difference a little training can make.
Out here, we love our animals, from the wildlife to the livestock. Inside, it's the same. They're just like family. We keep them happy and healthy, most of the time. Secondhand smoke puts pets at risk for cancer, feline lymphoma, vomiting, increases the risk of tumors and lung cancer, even causes eye and skin disease. Secondhand smoke puts your pet's life at risk.
Did you just text me?
I didn't want to disturb you if you were sleeping.
Sleeping? I'm sitting right next to you, silly.
There you are. Hey, I found a couple of Medicare helping programs online that I think we ought to look into.
It says if we qualify, we can get help paying for our prescription drugs. Oh, and there's a program that can help pay our Part B premium.
To learn more about extra help and Medicare savings programs, call your local SHIP counselor today.
Maybe I better text him.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore, and we're talking about the Senior Medicare Patrol Program. It's designed to prevent fraud to Medicare. It's a national program, and we have a representative here in Montana that has 11 different partners throughout the state that are always looking for fraud so they can prevent it. Rejoining us is Renee Labrie Shanks. You're the SMP statewide director, and recently in the news here in Montana, an individual was charged with Medicare fraud, and we're talking big bucks, aren't we? Tell us more about that.
Yes, it was a physician who's been charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud for allegedly helping facilitate. He was just a little cog in the wheel, really. He wasn't one of the owners of the outfit, but fraudulently billing Medicare. He got away with about $39 million for his role in it, but the entire case was about $2.75 billion. And this was all through durable medical equipment. It actually was going on through the pandemic with COVID test kits. It was a little more involved in that. But when we looked at our cases that we've turned into the Office of Inspector General, there was a case out of Hill County where a woman attended an SMP presentation just this year. And we really, really emphasize reading those statements, looking for things you didn't order or you don't recognize. She recognized this provider, and we turned that in and reported the fraud to Medicare. And this is the physician. It turns out he's been doing this for years. So I just have a message to those in Montana. Please read your statements, even if you go back and look in the past year and look for these things that you don't recognize. It's really easy to identify, and you could stop the fraud before we spend $39 million or $2.75 billion, because we never truly get that money back.
Yeah, $2.75 billion. That's an unbelievable number there. And we had a case here in Montana. But now sometimes when you look at your Medicare explanation of benefits, it kind of seems like it might be a little bit of Greek or a foreign language to you. But we have a network here that's here to help you out. Could you tell us about the SMP network and maybe some of the initial calls that they get, and do they offer community trainings?
Sure, thanks. So they can reach out in their county at 1-800-551-3191. That will get them to their closest office on aging. And from there, if they're in a county council or some other area, they will get directed to the right office that can help them. And we can help people understand how to read those notices. We can help people research if they have an issue. We can help even if it's like been mistakes. If somebody has a question about anything they've been billed for, we can look into that for them.
And there's trainings for this that you put on in the local communities. How can an individual learn about that training? And then what are some of the top points you might go over in a training that our viewers might be interested in?
Yeah, and it depends on the area that they live in. There's a lot of Medicare 101 classes being put on across the state through the area agencies on aging, for example, and our sister program, the SHIP program, the State Health Insurance Assistance Program, that helps people enroll in Medicare and understand their benefits. And we like to teach people what to look for, why to look for it, and then to report it. The most important part is to not just assume Medicare knows what they're doing because we're billing, and they must know they process millions of claims a day. As long as the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, they're processing the claims because they want the providers to get paid. They don't know what services you get. They don't know who your provider is. They just know they're going to submit it or process it if it's legitimate, that it's filled out correctly. So the person on Medicare is the one who knows this is a service I received or not. This is a provider I've seen or not. And that's all it is. Looking at them, you look at the date of service, the provider, and then the service itself. You would know if you received a telemedicine or a genetic test kit, or if you ordered a urinary catheter. It really isn't Greek when you just open them up and look at the points along the way.
And I think it's important to point out, too, is that the individuals you'll be contacting at that 800 number, they are Medicare professionals, they're SMP professionals, they're SHIP people, and they can help you well beyond fraud. If you have questions about Medicare, eligibility, programs that are available, we used to call it one-stop shopping. You can call the number, and they can help you in so many different areas. And what are some of maybe the common calls you may get? I mean, they're not all legitimate fraud calls, but there are concerns that people have when they call you. What are some of those concerns?
Sure. We also help with all sorts of things. There's sometimes people get bills where Medicare is denied because a secondary insurance was involved. Maybe they were in an automobile accident, and Medicare is saying, well, we're not going to pay because they should pay, but they're saying this claim is exhausted and we have to help clear that up. Sometimes people have conditional payments that Medicare made, and they're getting a big bill from the Department of the Treasury saying they owe thousands of dollars. So anytime somebody ends up with a medical bill that they don't know what to do with, or they're getting nowhere, give us a call. Don't suffer through that for 10 months before you give us a call. We can help. We know some of the avenues. We have contacts that we can try and clear it up easily. So give us a call.
And you've seen all the issues already. To generalize, it's new to the individual on Medicare that are receiving these letters, but it's not new to you. And you may have a quick and easy solution, maybe, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so for our viewers, we're drawn to a close on our second segment here, that we have a network out there to help you with Medicare billing, Medicare eligibility, but particularly in this show we're talking about is Medicare fraud. How can you identify it? How can you report it? But it might not be fraud, but how can they help you identify that? Well, we have a network. We have 11 area agencies or organizations throughout the state at the 800 number. Now we got one more segment. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Every 65 seconds, someone is affected with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Many become isolated at a time when help is most needed. If you or someone you love is affected, help is available, both for people with memory loss and their caregivers. Memory loss can feel frightening, but you are not alone. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
Elder abuse is a growing problem, and it's happening right here in our Montana communities. At least 1 in 10 older adults are victims of physical or emotional abuse, financial exploitation, or neglect. To get help or report elder abuse, call your local area agency on aging or Adult Protective Services at 1-844-277-9300.
Today, class, we'll be discussing the term ombudsman, a word we borrowed from the Swedes and never gave back. Say you're a resident or you have a loved one in long-term care. Now, what do you do if you're not happy with the care and services you receive? You call your long-term care ombudsman, of course. Your ombudsman is available to support you and your rights. An advocate on your behalf could be the ticket. This is your home. If you have questions, the numbers right there below me have all the answers. Class dismissed.
I was angry and upset when the doctor told me I have diabetes. I just didn't want to deal with it, the needles and the diet restrictions. But after I started to learn about it, those feelings changed. I was at risk for a heart attack caused by high blood sugar. That got my attention. I started watching my diet and making sure I got enough exercise every day. I want to be around for my grandkids, and now that I know what to do, it seems like a small price to pay.
Ask your doctor about diabetes education or visit montana211.org.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. I'm your host, Brian Lamore. We're continuing our discussion about the Senior Medicare Patrol Program, which addresses Medicare fraud. And again, you're the first line of defense. I mean, you have a question, you say something looks suspicious, go ahead and give a call. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If it isn't, that's fine. They're happy to talk with you. But, joining us is Renee Labrie-Shanks, you're the SMP statewide director, and we're talking off camera, and we tell everybody, beware of these calls, but the state Medicare Patrol nationally is going to be calling select few Montanans to be a part of a survey. Tell us more about the survey.
Yeah, and actually it will be through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We were notified that NORC at the University of Chicago, they're undertaking a national study, and it's called the Medicare Current Beneficiary Survey. And it's really designed to provide our policymakers, the ones that are making the decisions on what to cover, what not to cover, how much to cover. So it's really critical information that they're collecting, and they're collecting it on the healthcare experiences. So the big key is they'll be asking about health problems of people on Medicare, the types of medical care they receive, the cost of affordability, things like this, general information. And that's the key. They are not going to be asking you for Medicare numbers. They're not going to be asking you for birth dates. They're not going to be asking you for personal identifiable information. So if people receive these calls or have messages about the Medicare Current Beneficiary Survey, that is legitimate, and that would be great if they helped out with that survey.
Okay, well, it seems like so many programs are telling you what you need. It's so nice to hear that they want to hear from the people so that they can tune the program to what the people actually need rather than what the experts think you need. So if you get a call from an SMP person with a survey, well, if you question it, give the SMP people in Montana a call, and then you can call them back and answer that questionnaire. But now let's kind of recap. It's so important that it seems like a lot of the fraud that goes on with individuals in Medicare, it starts with a telephone call. So that call is so important for our viewers to know about and to maybe have some identifiers as to why this is not a legitimate call. Can you go over some of the commonalities of different fraud calls for us so we can identify it easier?
Sure. And, the point is this is about Medicare fraud, but all of the fraud calls have the same type of tactics where they get you in a heightened state of emotions, whether you feel scared or, they're using authority. Imposter scams are the number one scams across the United States, where they're pretending to be someone else, whether it's your bank or Social Security, the IRS, or a Medicare provider, or calling about Medicare. So when they call and they tell you this, I think the big red flag to look out for is, are they asking you for personal identifiable information like your Medicare number, your Social Security number, your bank account, your birth date, anything like that? No legitimate agency is going to call you out of the blue and say, please confirm your bank account. Please confirm your Medicare number. Not going to happen. Period. End of story. So if you find yourself in that call because you picked up, even though I told you not to, hang up. Just hang up. And if you have given out your information, don't be embarrassed about it. Call and report it so we can get it taken care of, because we got to stop them somehow. And honestly, the number one thing you can do beyond phone calls, beyond protecting your information, when we're talking about Medicare fraud, it's reading those statements, because even if they have your number, even if you gave it out or not, if you're reading those statements, you can see every single thing billed in your name. It doesn't matter, because at that point, that's when we can go call Medicare, report the fraud, get that turned into us so we can turn the case into the Office of Inspector General, and you can shut the fraud down. So most important of all, read those statements, and then just know that anybody at any time can get scammed. Can I tell you about a little theory that they have? It's called the illusion of invulnerability, which means people who don't think they can be scammed are the most at risk of being scammed.
Mm-hmm. Well, too, they have texts, and I'm getting a lot of those from UPS, FedEx, the Postal Service. We can't send a package to you. Click here. Well, don't. Contact the organization. Maybe you've ordered something, or just wait. Just ignore it. But again, we're drawing to a close on the show, unfortunately, Renee. What are some points that you want our viewers to come away with remembering about Medicare fraud?
Right. I'm not going to reiterate reading your statement and not giving the number out, but you just touched on a point with text. Please don't click on links in text that you don't recognize. There's something called, it sounds terrible, but pig butchering scams, where like when you butcher a pig, you fatten it up first. These texts come in and they say, hi, how are you? Or haven't heard from you in a while. Or where are you? And they just start an innocuous. If you don't know the number, do not respond to those texts, just delete. And yes, the USPS is not trying to tell you they can't deliver a package. Glacier Bank is not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Do not respond to those texts. Block, delete, and ignore.
Mm-hmm. Block, delete, ignore, and maybe contact your SMP people at the 800 number, where they are aware of scams that are going around, and they can probably tell you off the bat, we've heard this one before, right?
Yes, please do. Look up anything you question. Yep.
Okay, maybe new to you, but it isn't to SMP. And the purpose of SMP, they're a national program. Maybe a loved one is in another state. You can call the local people here on behalf of that loved one. It's an interrelated organization nationally to prevent Medicare fraud. And Renee, you and your people are doing a great job. Thank you for your service and representing Montanans and their best interests. It's wonderful to have people like you on staff.
Thank you.
Okay. And for our viewers, again, if you have any questions, if something might be fraudulent, do not reply to it. If you have any questions, if you don't know the person, don't know their organization, do not reply. Stay safe and watch those explanations of benefits coming in. For Aging Horizons, I'm Brian Lamore. Thank you for joining us.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.